Welcome, everyone. I'm Tom Crummell, co-director of the Biodesign Center here and also on the board at the Fogarty Institute. And so on behalf of those representative bodies and my partners in crime, Paul Yock, Andrew Cleland, Jeff Gertner, Mary Hahn, and Dr. Tom Fogarty, it's a privilege to welcome you all. We are standing room only. We have an overflow seating upstairs next to Pete's, so if you don't have a seat and you don't want to stand, we can accommodate you up there. All of us are truly delighted that you've joined us for this 21st annual Fogarty Lecture, co-sponsored by the Byers Center for Biodesign, Stanford Surgery, and the Fogarty Institute for Innovation. The attendance today speaks volumes about the lectureship, about the Silicon Valley medtech ecosystem, and about our regard and respect for our dear colleague and speaker today, Brook Byers. We established this lectureship 21 years ago to, on an annual basis, have the opportunity to kind of get off the treadmill and think about the process of innovation, the impediments to it, best practices, and to bring together noted speakers from around the world, and we've succeeded. The lectureship also celebrates the historic partnerships in the Valley that are represented here from business, from industry, from the university, from the medical community, and from all of the infrastructure and beehive that makes the medtech community. Finally, we use the annual lectureship to acknowledge the creative and ingenious contributions that Tom Fogarty has made throughout his career. Dr. Fogarty's contributions are legendary. The Fogarty balloon catheter, that was the first and really the granddaddy of every balloon catheter ever used. The Hancock tissue valve, the original biologic valve. The aortic stent graft, and about 160 others that we won't have time to talk about. Dr. Fogarty has been wonderfully recognized in a variety of ways. In 2000, he received the Lemelson Award from MIT. That's dubbed the Oscars for Invention. In 2001, the National Inventors Hall of Fame, that's the Wright brothers, Edison, you get the general flavor. 12 years ago, Tom founded the Fogarty Institute, a not-for-profit medtech educational incubator. It's now a preeminent part of the medical technology environment and ecosystem in the Valley, mentoring and teaching, and hopefully developing a next generation of Tom Fogartys. Scary thought, but could have some utility. And it now is thriving under the stewardship of Andrew Cleland and his remarkable leadership. In 2014, Dr. Fogarty received the National Medal of Technology Innovation Award from President Barack Obama at the White House. Despite Dr. Fogarty's presence, the White House was a saner time then than it is now. Dr. Fogarty's bio is in the booklet. It's worth a read, and it should be a source of inspiration for all the young people and for all the rest of us that want to be young at heart. The past list of speakers is really a who's who across all of the disciplines that make medtech innovation happen. The 21st Fogarty lecturer is Brook Byers, and Brook is a most worthy addition and adds great luster to the group of past speakers. Brook is recognized worldwide as both a thinker and a doer. He's been a science and technology venture capital investor and company builder for 4 decades, with a D. He co-founded the storied venture firm Kleiner Perkins, Caulfield & Byers, and formed the first life science-focused venture practice in the early 80s. Right out of the block, Brook's early investments bore fruit. He founded as CEO and then chair of the board 4 life science companies that at that time had a combined market cap of $8 billion, back when that was a big number. Kleiner has now helped entrepreneurs build over 120 life science and healthcare companies such as Genentech, The Original, Acuson, Livongo, Foundation Medicine, IDEC, Genomic Health, and a few others. In addition to his tremendous accomplishments, Brook has always been a giver and willing to give back to those organizations that he believes are valuable. He's been an active volunteer and advocate for Stanford Healthcare, the ecosystem, and the university. He co-founded and lead founded the Byers Eye Institute. He has mentored and lead funded the Byers Center for Biodesign. He served on the medical committee as member of the Stanford Board of Trustees. He serves now on the Stanford Medical Advisory Committee, which oversees the 2 hospitals, the medical school, and research. He co-founded and funded the Byers Esophageal Research Program. He served on BioX and ChemH startup task forces, serves on the current Dean's Advisory Board for Precision Health and Diagnostics, and he's been active in the GSB and the School of Engineering. There's no one better to deliver this year's 2019 Fogarty Lecture than Brook, and of course you would expect to be done in a novel way. So Brook is going to open with some prepared remarks. Then he and I will sit down and have a fireside chat, if you will, to try to talk through his experiences over that 40-year practice of life science investing. And finally, you, the audience, and Brook can have a conversation and dialogue on the last 15 minutes. So please join me in a warm welcome for our friend and colleague, Brook Byers.
I have a deep appreciation and bonding, as you can tell and heard, with Stanford Healthcare and medicine and all of you here, so many familiar and friendly faces. If I started calling all of you out, then I might leave somebody out, and I'd feel badly about that. So nice to see you, Irv. It pays to sit in the front row, right? Yeah. So I'd first like to learn about all of you. So if you're a doctor or a nurse, raise your hand. Wow, fantastic. If you're in the hospital or the clinics, please raise your hand. Great. If you're a healthcare scientist or inventor or entrepreneur, raise your hand. Wow. And some of you have raised your hand twice or 3 times. I'll get to that. And then finally, bottom of the food chain, if you're a venture capitalist, raise your hand. All right, got a couple of those.
I flunked out.
Tom, I got a chance to spend some time with Tom before we came down here. And Tom, I am honored to be here to do this lecture in your namesake. And you've always been a hero to me. You and I met many, many years ago. We talked about a lot of science and innovation, engineering, and unmet medical need over the years. And what you've done has always been something that I wanted to emulate, and I've tried to do that. I think that's great that this lecture is in your honor, 21st year, and what you've done at Fogarty Institute as well. So why am I here today? 2 answers. One is Paul Yock and Tom Crummell invited me to come, and I'm going to do anything they asked me to do. Witness the name Byers on Biodesign. That came about because I was meeting with Paul Yock, and I've been a volunteer mentor on Biodesign for 15 years, mentoring teams and so on. And we were talking about how could it endure, and the way you endure at Stanford is you become a center. And so I said, well, how are you going to do that? And he said, well, I'm going to need corporate sponsors and corporate, gifts and all that. And I said, they're going to come with strings attached. And you know how Paul does. He looked at me sitting in my office and said, well, do you have any ideas? Another reason I'm here today is I am one of many of what Stanford has in its ecosystem. I'm a catalyst, a mentor, advisor, supporter, all of that. I'm one of many. Many of you in this room are those things too. So I'm representing a type, and I hope my comments today will resonate with you and inspire some of you as well to do more of this kind of stuff. that we're talking about. But first, let's talk about this Stanford ecosystem that we have. I think we all have our heads down and we're out there innovating, we're doing what we do, but it is really incredible and special, and we should just stop and appreciate it and what goes on here. It is a beacon for the rest of the world of how to do interdisciplinary right with engineering, medicine, research, clinical, hospitals. How about the new adult hospital? David Entwistle, well done. And business and law, all co-located, cooperative, a community. It really is a community, and it's normal to cooperate across that. That's not true at a lot of universities around the world, and I visited a lot of universities, and so I have firsthand knowledge of that. So I'm going to go through some examples of what I just described. Let's start with where we are. BioX was a parking lot 2 decades ago. And then look at what it is now and how it was put together. Scott Delp is here, and he came to see me with Matt Scott, and they saw a bunch of others, and described how 300 members of the Stanford community signed up to be part of a collective to try to start something called BioX. And the idea was take great faculty and researchers from different parts of the campus and put them all in one building, and then try to get them to work together and see what happens. Now, it seems kind of obvious now, but it wasn't then. It was actually kind of a breakthrough thing. And other places have copied that now, QB3 at UCSF and others at Dana-Farber, UPenn, Harvard, and wherever. But that was a new idea, and it worked. And then we look around the rest of the campus and see what else has gone on. Biodesign started to bring together medicine and engineering and teams. And a theme you're going to hear from me today is teams. I don't believe in the lone genius person that journalists like to write about when they write about companies or all of that. It's really teams that win. And what Biodesign has invented and chronicled and taught is a quintessential method of how to do things that I know in all of my work, I use that method by starting with the need, a doctor and a patient sitting in an exam room or in an OR or wherever, and working backwards to what needs to be done. Identify, invent, and implement. And then Biodesign has added value exploration, value estimation, and value proposition, because in the world today, we have to think about economics and affordability. Biodesign's measurable outcomes. 161 innovation fellows since 2001. 1,900 Stanford students since 2002 have taken the courses. 125 global fellows and faculty since 2015. 50 Stanford faculty involved since 2015. And get this, 2.7 million patients have benefited from inventions made by Biodesign fellows and students while they were in the program. Now imagine going forward, the integral of all of that as we move forward and it's implemented. And 50 companies. Another example of initiatives that are remarkable at Stanford is President Mark Tessels-Levine's initiatives at the Stanford Research Park. And what he just announced is the Innovative Medicines Accelerator and programs that will go alongside that. And I predict what we're going to have over there is a robust startup community right next to our campus, which is surprising we haven't had for a long time. We have some on Porter Drive, but we'll have more. Another example is MTL's initiative in ethics, society, and technology. And in fact, this diagram shows that, of how different parts of those topics, those really important topics today, are all coming together and being integrated, including over the engineering school, the Applied Ethics and Innovation Entrepreneurship Education program run by my brother, Professor Tom Byers. Another example of the Stanford ecosystem is the creation of how new programs can get created. from scratch here by people coming together in a collaborative way. An example of that is S-Empire, started by John Clark, George Triadopoulos, and Mary Hahn, a multidisciplinary approach to diseases of the esophagus, an overlooked area, in my view, until now, here at Stanford, a center of excellence, and I'm particularly interested in it because I am a patient. Another example, the courses and exposures our son Blake Byers got when he was getting his PhD gave me an insider's view of the quality of science here. While he was getting his PhD and doing rotation and interacting with a lot of you and others in high quality science with Disseroth, Weissman, Quake, Puglisi, Longacre. Finally, before we sit down and tell some stories, I'd like to talk about all of you and how you go about doing what you do, and something that concerns me a great deal. In the digital sectors, we're seeing the consequences of the methodology, or sort of the mindset of move fast, break things, disrupt, ignore rules. And we're paying the consequences with loss of privacy, with distrust of technology, with what I would call a techlash happening now, and threats to our society and our democracy. But all of you who've worked in the medical field have grown up in a very different ethos. You've grown up in a mission-based profession with purpose and ethics and values and accepted regulation and care for who we're developing all our services and products for, which are patients. Yes, we celebrate audacity of view and vision, but we should have that and channel that with a humility about what our mission is about. And I think you can all feel good about that. One of my favorite quotes is from Nelson Mandela, is, "It always seems impossible until it's done." I would say that about all the inventors here, and Tom, that's so true for you. Another favorite quote I saw this week, I was reading about Maya Angelou, and it made me think about being here today with you. She said, "People will forget what you said, and people will forget what you did." And that's okay if you forget what I said today and what I've done. But she went on to say, people will never forget how you made them feel. I want to make you feel good. I want you to feel good about how you've chosen to spend your life and your profession. And it's hard in healthcare, right? We have to overcome biology. We have to apply chemistry and invention and medical device and engineering and all of that. And then we have to do the clinical trials, the whole time being very, very careful. And then we have to do the damn paperwork, right? And then move on to getting that out there to help patients, and then getting reimbursed. I don't understand the word reimbursed. It's getting paid. It's like we did something and then we get no, that's the payers should be our natural allies. But what I want to tell you is you should feel really good about yourself. And you should pat yourselves on the back, and if that makes you uncomfortable, then get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I want to applaud all of you. Right. And each other.
I thought it was useful for us to get a little piece of Brook's mind's eye and his brain about how he built companies brick by brick, and ask him, so what inspires you? Who inspires you? What drives your getting up in the morning and doing what you do?
Well, I've been really lucky to have a lot of people in my life and my career that come along the way to inspire me. I was trying to think about how to limit that down to a set. So I picked 4, and it's 4 people who, plus one more, 4 people who have written books. And so I thought I'd share with you some of my favorite books, which I bought at Kepler's. Everybody, go to Kepler's. Join up, keep that thing going. So one of my first inspirations, key to me, is my partner, John Doerr. John's been my partner for 35 years at Kleiner Perkins, and we've helped build a lot of companies together in a firm and had a lot of fun in science and technology. John began his career with Andy Grove at Intel, and it was there that John learned about objectives and key results. And John wrote a book recently called Measure What Matters. I highly recommend this book to you. It's about applying that style of OKRs to really anything, to businesses, to nonprofits, to schools, to your personal life, to hospitals, to whatever. And it's a way of measuring what matters, setting objectives and goals, and it's told in stories of companies that John has advised, and Johnny Appleseed this kind of system all the way to the beginning of Google. John was there. We invested in Google in May of '99. And when John tells the story when he went over there, and it's in the book, to suggest in the garage that they try OKRs, Larry and Sergey, one said, yeah, great idea. The other one said, no, we're not going to have any process in this company. But they now today, all 60,000 employees do OKRs. And we do it at Kleiner Perkins as well. Measure what matters. A second inspiration to me is a gentleman who spent a lot of time with our firm. And he started out as a coach at Columbia in football, and then he went to Kodak, and then he came out to Apple to work with Steve Jobs and launch the Macintosh. And then Bill Campbell went on to be a coach and mentor to Steve, to Larry and Sergey, to Scott Cook over at Intuit, and 40 other companies. And there's a new book out called The $1 Trillion Coach, and that pretty much estimates the market cap of all the companies he coached. I highly recommend this book. It's less about Bill. He passed away. He wouldn't want a book just about him. It's about his management techniques and wisdom about how he trained teams. And for him, it was all about teams. And one of my favorite things about how he believed teams ought to be is for teams to function well, they have to have, yes, a shared mission, and they have to have audacious goals, and they have to do all that, but they have to have psychological safety as a team. And that is allow members of the team to take risk, to be audacious, to put an idea out there, knowing that we'll debate it, whatever, but that I'll be safe doing that, and that we can work shoulder to shoulder. Those of you who run complex labs, those of you who do OR, work in the operating room and all of that, I think you must have that in your teams as well. A third book, no surprise, Biodesign. This is a really heavy book. This book is used in how many countries, Paul?
40 plus.
40 plus countries around the world. It's now the Bible of how to teach this and the methodology that I talked about earlier. And then my brother Tom Byers' book, Technology Innovation.
Nepotism.
Yeah. Yes. Technology Ventures, enough said. And then another inspiration to me is my other brother, Ken, who's here. He flew out from Atlanta for this, and Ken has inspired me. He founded a company, Byers Engineering, in Atlanta many decades ago. He's still CEO, and I learned a lot about management from him, just watching him walk around his company, his techniques, common sense techniques that are super effective, and I've copied them and used them in my work.
Good, good. Fantastic. Well, welcome. So now let's get to some stories about several selected ventures that really illustrate the adventure of healthcare innovation. And each has a particular twist in the Valley and a Stanford piece. And so we've kind of noodled on these to try to make them illustrative across the spectrum. And so, Brook, let's start with IDEC Pharmaceuticals early in the days of monoclonal antibodies.
So Tom and I thought it'd be fun, instead of me lecturing on principles of management and startups and the ups and downs and pivots, is just to tell a story about all that, stories. And so we've got a couple, and they all have a Stanford connection or origin. So in the late 80s, monoclonal antibodies were a new thing. And two clinician researchers here, Ron Levy and Richard Miller, came to me and said, let's start a company to do therapeutic monoclonal antibodies, which was a new concept then and unproven. And let's create something called an anti-idiotype. So we started a company called BTS and changed the name to IDEC. Developed first products, put them through animal trials, and then went to a phase 1 trial. We treated 15 patients, and it didn't work. Not unlike a lot of companies, but it didn't work. And so we had to decide what to do. And this is a story about how these pivots come about, and it's not the way it's written in books and Fortune magazine. It's more painful, and it's more ambiguous, and it's more confusing. In this case, half the board of directors wanted to return the $10 million left in the checking account to the investors. The other half wanted to bet that on another project that was kind of a skunk works by the R&D head. And I was the tie vote. And so I voted to go with bet. And we bet on a project inside called Pan-B. It was an anti-CD20 antibody. We moved it forward and put it into a phase 1 trial for patients with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and we had spectacular results with it. We didn't have any money left, and so I arranged to sit next to the CEO of Genentech at the time at a fundraiser.
They had a lot of money.
They had a lot of money, fundraiser in San Francisco, and I started pitching him on a joint venture, and he turned to me, really funny guy, and he went, if you'll shut up, I'll give you a meeting. So we got the meeting, and we did a JV with Genentech, and they had the money, and they had a manufacturing facility to make proteins at scale. And that antibody and its derivatives are Rituxan. And 4.5 million patients in the world have now been treated with Rituxan for lymphomas, other cancers, multiple sclerosis, RA, you name it. So that fateful night of that board debate rings in my head, and every time I'm faced with decisions like that, where it's no, give the money back or bet it on changing the world, bet on changing the world.
Nice. So a great story of failure, persistence, and agility. Great. Let's move on to Oculi. That's a Stanford biodesign startup trying to solve the problem of dry eye in the field of electroceuticals.
Yeah, so I got kind of a simultaneous call from Paul Yock and also from Mark Blumenkrantz, who at the time was chair of ophthalmology, and asked me to meet with a grad student, Michael Akerman. And so I said, okay, yeah, dry eye. And I didn't know much about dry eye. So he came out to my office on Sand Hill Road, and we talked, and very, very polite Canadian. And we started talking about dry eye, and I didn't realize how complex dry eye is, and that there are 5 million people in the US who suffer from dry eye, and it's awful. And 2 million really, really terribly acutely. And it's a multiple thing. It's not enough tears, meibomian gland issues, it's so on. But he had this idea that to stimulate the lacrimal nerve, which is right up above the eye, and that would increase tear production. So I said, okay, well, how are you going to do it? And he said, well, I'm going to, implant a little something about the size of a piece of rice, and then have a handheld induction system to create a current, and it's going to stimulate the nerve and create something. I said, well, okay, all right. I'll tell you what, I'll spot you $100,000, and you go develop a basic engineer system and try it in some animal models. Okay, fine. So he came back in like 2 months, and he had some data. I said, just come back when you have data. So he came back, and he had what's called a lacrimal score, which is the wetness of tissue. And he said, wow, that's great, that's great. Now, of course, the animal model for the human eye is rabbit eye. So where'd you get the rabbits? And he looked at me and went, you didn't, Michael. Yes, he took a STEM device and a wire and stuck it up above his eyelid, and he produced the data. And I said, okay, I'll raise a big Series A and I'll back you, but never, ever do that again. Where'd you do it? He said, in my kitchen. Who helped you? And he said, I'm never going to say. So we did the Series A. We wanted to develop it. But, you go along and you find out that it doesn't always work out the way you think, because what we found out in doing human trials was that the placement of the little really an antenna on the nerve was very surgical dependent, surgery person dependent, and we're getting mixed results. So we thought, well, this isn't going to scale. So it turns out that the team, this is a true story, we're in Mexico City at a big eye institute down there, a very high quality eye institute. And they went out to dinner, and I think that they figured, well, this whole thing's a bust, so they got really stinking drunk. And they were fiddling around, and the story goes that they were playing with straws, dipped it in salsa, and stuck it up the nose. And it started tearing like heck. And they go, wait, the lacrimal nerve does run down the nose. So they came back and called a board meeting. We go in, they said, we're going to drop that whole thing, and we're going to pivot over to this idea, and we're going to handheld device that's got 2 electrodes, and you stick it up the nose, and you do that. And okay, fine. So once again, bet the checking account on the turn, and that worked. It's patient dependent on getting it to use. You don't have to go to surgery. You don't have to do anything, and the company was acquired by Allergan.
The beginning of neurostim, and there's also this rich history of physicians experimenting on themselves. The first heart catheterization was done by a cardiologist who threaded up the vein and took a picture with a catheter in his heart. Great stuff, great stuff. Okay, let's shift gears to OptiMedica and part of the ophthalmology story, the physics story, and tell us about the femtosecond laser and that whole enterprise, please.
All right, so back, how this got started was I was a patient at the time of the Department of Ophthalmology, which was spread all over the place, like 6 different locations as a patient. It was awful. But one was a retina practice of Mark Blumenkrantz, so I was his patient, and we would talk, and he would say he had an idea. This guy over in the physics lab had this idea, Daniel Palanker. Brooke, have you ever had laser treatment for your retina problems? I've had them all my life. I said, yeah, and it's terrible. Because what you do is you go in, and the ophthalmologists use a YAG laser, and they do 1 shot at a time, and then they go, well, maybe I'll do a shot there, and I'll do a burn there, and I'll do a burn there, trying to tack the retina back on, right? And Daniel Palanker said, well, why do you do it that way? Why don't we do a whole scanning thing and lay down patterns and actually have thought behind it? It's sort of like ML, but used by the human brain. So it set all this down. And so they came up with the idea of Pascal, which is pattern lasing down. And so we started a company, OptiMedica, to do that, put it down in Santa Clara. And that moved really well. And in fact, that is the standard of care today for diabetic retinopathy. So we built that up and we took it to market and it was going well, but we wanted to go worldwide in distribution and we couldn't raise the money enough to do that. So we did a deal with Topcon, a Japanese company, which had worldwide presence and channels of distribution, sales, marketing, service, and all that. And so that's fine. And so we met our mission of patient care plus success. And they gave us $50 million up, kind of down payment as well. So then we're sitting there and with the CEO, Mark Fouché, and saying, well, we got $50 million. What are we going to do with the $50 million now? Because we got the income coming. And said, well, let's invent something else. So we invented femtosecond laser applied to cataract surgery. And that, easy for me to say, that was really hard to do by the engineers and all of that. But that was a case of take one success, don't declare victory, don't distribute the $50 million to the investors, go again, and we did. And that worked out well. And OptiMedica was acquired by AMO, which was acquired by J&J, which is totally committed to ophthalmology today. And that's a standard of care for cataract surgery.
Fantastic. Unbelievable story. Okay, we'll move out of eye and into, there's this great history of cardiac transplantation and beyond here at Stanford, going back to Norm Shumway and Dick Lauer. And CareDx is focus on transplant rejection diagnoses. Used to be we just biopsy stuff, and there's probably a better way to do it.
Yeah, so the way to tell back then was you go take a piece of a heart, literally.
A device invented here,
yeah.
But stick in the jugular vein, put a little pliers down, grab a hunk of the inside of the atrium and jerk it out.
And then
modern medical technology.
Yeah. All right.
Very modern back then.
I understand.
Yeah. So you had a heart transplant, and you get to go in and have that done every couple months to see if you're titrated right on your anti-rejection drugs. And so, and you're looking at tissue and angry white cells. So Tom Quatermos here in cardiology thought, well, there must be a better way. Let's develop a blood test to do this and look at a set of markers. And this is back at the beginning of a whole new wave of exciting molecular diagnostics companies. And I'm so excited about that category because it was CareDx was the name of the company started at the time. It had XDX was the name, but we changed the name to CareDx. And about that time, Genomic Health was started to work on breast cancer to determine which women would be chemo responsive with their tumors or not. By the way, if I could pause on Genomic Health, that was started 12 years ago. Fast forward to today, over 500,000 women have not had to have chemo because their tumor was not responsive to it. And also, the test can tell chance of recurrence. And so imagine the savings of all that trauma to those patients and to the healthcare system. So for CareDx, we went on and launched it, and the company's up in Millbrae and developed the blood test, and so patients could come in and have that instead of the tissue biopsy. But then we got up to a certain size, but heart transplant is not that big of a category, so we wanted another product. And this is a Stanford story because when I would hang out around here, and a lot of fun for me is just what I call lab crawl, or I hang out at Pete's and just listen, pick up ideas. I heard that Steve Quake had an idea for a diagnostic to measure transplant rejection for kidney. Now, that's a pretty big market. So I went to Steve, and he had other ideas of what to do with the diagnostic and like start a company or something. And like all Stanford profs want to start a company. And I said, look, you can do that, but look, why don't you take the path of least resistance here? Why don't you license it to CareDx, and we'll commercialize it, and we'll take it into the market and do all that. And we know how to do this because we've done it for a heart transplant. And I just wasn't sure about that. And so I was trying to think about do something dramatic. I was sitting in his office, just up here in BioX. And I said, okay, I'll tell you what. If you'll license it to me, I will personally invest in the project over at CareDx myself, and I will stay on the board of directors, make sure this works. And for the closing dinner of the licensing, I will come to the dinner and I will tattoo CareDx on my arm. And, you know, Quake, right? And just anything a little weird like that, he really liked. So he goes, deal. Okay, so got all the IP straightened out, arranged the license, did all this, had the closing dinner at a local restaurant in the private room, and I showed up and I got CareDx right here. There it is, Steve, all good. And you can't put anything over on him because he went, and it rubbed off. But if any of you want a CareDx stick-on sticker tattoo, I've got some extras. I got some extras at home. And anyway, so that company today with that test is running at about $120 million a year annual run rate.
And I think it's interesting because you see the tracking to what we now are thinking about in terms of precision medicine. So it's, you know, that story rolls along. So then let's move to Verano, another Blumenkrantz adventure.
Yeah, so Mark called me like 2 years ago and said, hey, you said you're interested in big data, and I said, yeah, and he said, I know where there's some big data, really big data. Yeah, really. And I said, where? And he says, San Francisco. What, where? And he goes, American Academy of Ophthalmology. He said, he's like whispering on the phone. He goes, Brook, they've been collecting clinical data for 5 years from their 15,000 ophthalmologists. And it's a thing called an IRIS database. Of course, it's called IRIS, ophthalmology. And so he said, will you go up there with me? So yeah, we did. We went up and we talked to David Park, the president of AAO, and they have been doing it. It was a visionary thing of his. And they did what other people talk about but haven't done, is they go and they ingest clinical data from 33 different kinds of EMRs. I mean, imagine how messy that data is. And they were figuring out how to ingest, how to clean, how to structure, how to do all this. And so then you might wonder, well, the so what? Well, a pioneer in this field is Flatiron in oncology. Now, the way they got in was they went and bought a bunch of EMRs that had all that data. But here, we didn't have to do that, all that capital up front. We signed a license agreement. And then from that, we can develop and see care pathways. They have data on 60 million unique patients, 180 million patient visits in ophthalmology, 5 million macular degeneration patients, 6 million glaucoma patients. So imagine if you have this, what can now be done with algorithms and AI and ML we all like to talk about. But AI and ML is really no better than the data that you have. And then the insights for care pathways, for reporting to Medicare for reimbursement and all of that, and then going to pharma and med device companies who want to run clinical trials, and then we can say, okay, you know, Dr. X in Phoenix is proven that she can run better outcomes on a new drug for MD or something like that. So it's going to speed up all of that. And it gets me to understanding where all data is going, which is cooperation with FDA. So there's a new term I've only learned more recently, which is regulatory quality data. And whatever you do and everything, all your work and all the data you're collecting, think about, are you proud enough about the quality of your data to show it to the FDA? And the reason you want to think that way is that the FDA is moving into the direction with the new hire from the spring, Abby Abernethy, who was at Flatiron and before that DCRI at Duke. And her mandate at FDA is to bring it into the modern world about data and systems. And I think we will actually see virtual clinical trial arms in the near future.
Yeah, when you hear 60 million patients. You go, that's big data. Great stuff. The last thing we wanted to talk briefly about is a different kind of startup, and that was this little startup called the Byers Eye Institute.
Okay, I called to Stanford Eye Institute.
Okay.
And the reason I thought we would talk about that is yeah, a lot of that goes on at Stanford, but it's kind of a fun story, and you might wonder how it came about, is that the ophthalmology department was a division, which means it wasn't even a department. And a division is something that sounds like what it is. And it was in all these different locations. If you were front of the eye patient, you go one place. If you're retina, you go another. If you had something else, you go another place. If you're going to have surgery, you go to the basement of the hospital into the surgery thing, and your surgeon, your retina surgeon, will be waiting for you, and then they're bringing out a patient that just had orthopedic surgery or something else, and then you go in to get your retina done or your cataracts or whatever. Let me tell you, I've been a eye patient since I was 11 years old from trauma then. It's lived with me. And eye patients, we're not sick. We just have a condition. Right. So we thought, why don't we integrate the whole thing into one thing? So Mark and I and some others went and started talking to Stanford leadership, and how about we have a standalone eye center? And they think that's a really terrible idea. No, everything's going to be integrated in Redwood City, which makes sense. Integrate everything over there, a lot of clinical practices and so on, and we need the space over there. So they said, well, they gave us a challenge. Well, if you go find a building, all right, then maybe we'll do it. So we went and found a building and came back, and this is right after the 2001 stem cell thing with NIH funding, and they said, that's really a great building. We're going to put stem cell out there because we have to get it off campus. Okay, fine. So then we go around, we found another building in Stanford Research Park and came back and said, how about this building? They go, it's a really good building. We're putting pathology over there. That's really good. Keep looking. This is really good. So we're really helping on the outplacement of square foot usage off the main campus. You all know about all that land use thing.
Spoken like a board trustee.
Yeah. And so during this time, I was traveling around the U.S. and some international. And in my travels, I would go visit eye institutes. And I started noticing common characteristics of world-class eye institutes is that they were, in fact, standalone. And you think about the Wilmer at Hopkins, Baskin Palmer at University of Miami, Jules Stein at UCLA, the Borja, that's the name of the guy who runs it, Borja, I love that Spanish guy, in Barcelona. His institute is this white citadel thing up on the hill. If you're in Barcelona and you look to the west, you'll see this magnificent architecture white building up there. It's not an art museum, it's the Eye Institute. So I took a picture of that and came back to Stanford. I had the good judgment of not showing that photo saying we want to build something like this. But we did find a building over on 101 at Embarcadero. And then the whole thing was, if you build it, will they come? I mean, what if we do this and you don't get the patient flow? Rodney Perkins knows how this works because he's innovated in ears and all that. And so we thought, okay, we're going to start small. We're going to be very entrepreneurial. We're not going to try to be too big, too fast, and we're going to start offering just the clinical side. But what we're going to do is we're going to brand it, right? It's the Eye Institute at Stanford. It's branded because most eye patients don't know where to go. If you have trauma in eye, if you go to the OR, well, there's not an ophthalmologist sitting there. We have a Stanford ER doc right here, perfect at diagnosing, but not real good at fixing eyes. So he's got to call someone, and it's going to be a couple hours before you get someone there. So we thought, why don't we brand it so eye patients know where to go? And that worked. And so we started getting patient flow, and we started overcoming the skepticism, and so we added ORs. down on the ground floor because you don't want shaking going on while they're working on your retina. Pretty fine tolerances, so we got that. And then pediatrics, I was down in San Jose, and Packard said, hey, you guys are doing well. We'll move peds up there too. And it all added up to now 70,000 patient visits a year over at the Eye Institute. But the other part of this is what I want to talk about is where medicine is going. It's thinking about the patient as a consumer and thinking about that patients and more because of phones. And why is it that you can call a ride, you can order all your entertainment, you can do all your computation, you can do everything mobile, socially, it's delivered to you. Amazon has changed the whole thing about where things come to you. Why isn't it that medicine isn't more focused on the person, not as a patient who has to always go and get medical service that way, but it's more delivered? Now, we don't deliver eye care per se over there, but we also at the Eye Institute are working on mobile for tracking of visual acuity. A lot of acuity is lost in macular degeneration and glaucoma between visits because no one knows. And why is it you have to go sit in a waiting room and then be checked and say, oh crap, we should have upped your dose a month ago, something like that. So that's changing. And the way the eye thing was designed was really fun for me because as an eye patient, I got to be involved in the architecture. Because eye patients, we bang into stuff, we walk into walls, we fall downstairs, we don't see well. So it was all designed that way. An ironic twist of fate, I am back to being a patient. My retina guy is here, Ted Lang, who I see every other month.
Great story. So let's now get the audience involved, and we've got a couple of folks that volunteered a few questions, and we'll also have a mic moving, but let's start with Paul Yock, please. Paul's, everyone knows, the founder of Biodesign and kind of the maestro of medtech innovation in the Valley.
I love having a chance to ask this. You are the person with the longest view of life science venture capital. I'm just wondering, what's your assessment of how things are now in venture funding of life science technologies compared to what you saw in your career?
I think you just called me old.
It's horrible that he's right.
You know that whole thing about your book? This is a great time to be an entrepreneur. I've never seen such a supply of capital for entrepreneurs and ideas and the robustness of the whole mentality around entrepreneurship. It's come into its own. And in terms of supply of capital, the great thing for entrepreneurs about accessing capital is that you don't need a license or anything like that to be an investor in healthcare. All right, good. I was afraid that my time was up. Yeah. I'm enjoying this. So good. Because why? Let's break it down. So angel investing is ubiquitous now. In fact, anybody in the room, probably a lot of you have made some angel investments in companies. And so that's wonderful. And I read the other day, there's an angel investing network in the US, 15,000 members. There's a family office network that invests in ventures in the US, 18,000 member organizations. There are seed funds now that specialize in just doing the early part. There's seed and A early type funds. Only 20 years ago, venture capital was about 500 organizations in the US, like the names you hear about on Sand Hill Road and stuff like that. Now it's all over the place. So I think the environment is wonderful. And my only caution is be careful who you take as an investor in your company, because you're stuck with them. And especially, this is not like apps where you back an app and it works or not, and if it works, maybe it's going to be rolled up and acquired, and it's a 2-year thing. No, in healthcare, we're in a 5 to 8 year product R&D, product development, commercialization. Commercialization's really hard. It takes a long time. Tom and I have talked about that. So be careful who you get in, and make sure they're aligned with your values. Make sure it's some people you want to be in the foxhole with, because the reason I told those stories earlier is that when you go through those ups and downs and the first product fails and you got to make all those tough decisions, that's tough on the teams, and teams fracture. And some people handle stress well and some don't. Don't get an investor who panics. Get one that when problems happen, they say, okay, I'm coming over, chill the Chardonnay, we're going to figure this out, and I'm with you. Yeah.
Great advice. Casey had a question. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, let's see, good, microphone. So, what do you think is most important when you look at these companies? Is it the person? Is it the product they're talking about? Is it that market? What kind of floats your boat and makes you jump into this thing?
Okay, that question is coming from one of the deans of med device entrepreneurship in the world, Casey McGlynn. And was he a Fogarty lecturer?
He was a Fogarty lecturer.
Yeah, that's right.
Number 5.
I was a sleeper.
Au contraire, Casey.
So, Casey, why don't you stand up and answer your own question? Okay, so, cocktail party talk, it's always, is it the person or the product or the market? Well, in what we all do in this, yeah, it's those things. It's also the regulatory, it's also channel of distribution, it's how do you get adoption, how do you get KOLs to stand up at a conference and advocate, how do you get society standard of care recommendation. So it's kind of all of that, and so the reason I went through that is my methodology, besides the biodesign, start with the need and work backwards, is I try to think about in a company where are the white hot risks, and put those risks up front and spend all the early money on the risk. So is the risk in product? Is it possible to develop a product? No one's done that before. It's going to require some major inventions. But if it does, and there is a replacement market, you're going to replace some incumbent with a 10 times better product, then put all the money on the product. But a lot of the early money, and don't hire marketing people. Marketing has a first name. It's called product. Product marketing. Marketing's no good without a product. So start with that. And then, but is there regulatory risk because the clinical trial is very difficult for this kind of indication or this kind of product? Then how early on that? And so I started thinking. I think about where are my white hot risks? How do I align those? Like with Michael Akerman on the dry eye thing. To me, the whole thing was, will it work? So don't go spend $5 million building labs and joining the Better Business Bureau and doing all this stuff. Just make one and try it. For some things where it's a product where there's no competition, like it's a brand new market, then you're going to take a chance on the market. Okay, then how do you manage that risk? Is then you go find strategics to cooperate with the company from the get-go. Not something you would normally do, but if you cut the right kind of arrangement with them, you do that. So I think it's a matter of balance, and that's where the judgment comes from, and that's why in this Stanford ecosystem I was talking about, there are a lot of mentors and advisors around here. Go see them. And so I look for that mix and balance. There's never a perfect startup. There's never a perfect venture. And on team and people, a big mistake people make is they think they're supposed to have all the boxes filled with people, like an org chart. So they may be a fantastic inventor founder, but they think they're supposed to have a CFO, so they have the brother-in-law as the CFO, and then they got, someone else who's a neighbor who's like head of marketing, and then that's a problem for me because then I'm supposed to get rid of them. So don't present me with that problem. I'd rather help you hire the team. So, right.
Good advice. Good advice. Andrew had a question. There's been this tremendous experience with FDA internships at the Fogarty Institute that's educated us, and I thought a FDA discussion. Yeah.
You've mentioned that we're in a highly regulated industry, and without falling into Paul's trap over your remarkable career, how have you seen? What's your experience with FDA been?
My experience with FDA is good, but that's because I take an approach that they're my partner. I didn't know that when I was younger, but I've learned it over time. And, FDA is not this monolithic thing that's all vague and whatever in White Oak campus in Maryland near DC or whatever. It's a bunch of people, and they have a job, and they're underpaid and under-resourced, but they have a mission and a purpose, and they want to do a good job. They want to protect safety, but they want innovation. And so what you do is go develop relationships with them, meet them. Now, if you go to White Oak, you go through a bunch of metal detectors and you go up to their offices in one of the towers, and then there's always a lawyer in there and all that stuff. The best way to meet people from FDA is meet them at conferences. Find out if they're speaking, find out if they're there, and they love to get out and meet innovators and do that, and then have coffee with them and sit and talk with them about what you're doing and do that. Now, the Fogarty Institute, I know, has a program where they bring FDA staffers out as interns for a couple of weeks and hang out and see how are devices actually developed and made. And a lot of people at FDA have never been to a company. At Coalition 21st Century Medicine, which Hannah Murphy here is executive director of, and that's molecular diagnostics companies, about 40 companies. What they do is they bring people from CDRH that regulates that out and visit Genomic Health and CareDx and Verisight and all these companies around here and actually show what does it take to build a CLIA lab company, developing a lab-developed test, and the rigor of running clinical trials like their drugs, but their diagnostics, and doing all of that. And then we all go to lunch. They have to buy their own lunch. Got to be careful. But and then bring them to Stanford pathology and show them that too. And once you do that, all the barriers break down. They have their job. They're not going to bend the rules. No, they're supposed to be rigorous, but we understand them better. They understand us better.
Fantastic. The hour's getting late, but let's give Tom Fogarty the last question.
Yeah, I got a question I can't answer. What do you think about the application of artificial intelligence to the field of medicine?
Okay, so it's already happening. Yeah, it's already happening, and as I said earlier, I think AI is I think I simplify things sometimes to understand them. AI is a set of mathematics and algorithms. It's only going to be as good as the data. So as high quality you can get. I like to think regulatory data would be that proud of it. But then in devices, well, in drug discovery, it's being applied now to see inferences and do all of that. I'll tell two stories on AI and devices. One is I had dinner the other night with Dana Mead, who is CEO of HeartFlow, a company that was started out of Stanford, out of Charles Taylor's lab, right? And they take...
Moved to the Institute.
And moved to the Institute.
Yeah.
And as I think he showed me on his phone a visual image of a heart and rotated it for me and showed me the occlusions. And then he said they can simulate putting a stent in and see what effect that would have. And I'm going, wow, how do you do that? And he goes, AI and ML applied to that. It's here. Another is a company that our firm is involved in called Viz.ai. When a patient has stroke, suspected stroke, they're hopefully brought to a hub center as fast as possible, and they get a CT scan, right? And then that scan is going to be read by radiologists, and radiologists are really good at this. They're trained to look for what kind of blockages and where, and and then determine what should be done. Is it thrombectomy, or is it medical management with TPA or a coil or whatever. Hopefully we're going to get, I hope some of you invent portable CTs so they can go in ambulances so this can all happen faster. But where the AI is working in that is to help identify as quickly as possible where the radiologists ought to look. It's augmenting the radiologist. It's working alongside. I like to think of it as sitting on the shoulder of, it's not going to replace radiologists. Like, I don't like this sort of like, is AI going to replace doctors? No, it's just going to make them better, and the doctors are going to be better at what they do, and it's going to augment. And so, interestingly, with Viz.ai, part of it's that, but part of it is about, it changes the workflow. Because the earlier you can diagnose, the earlier you can decide what that intervention is going to be, then start alerting all the other caregivers who have to be ready to go, thrombectomy or whatever, because time is brain cells, right? Yep. So anyway, I think it's there. I think it's going to be embedded in everything.
Well, on that note, we have standing room only at 5:10 on a Friday afternoon. Absolutely spectacular Fogarty lecture event. Brook, we're all so grateful.
Thank you.
So we have the annual gift, which has an eagle's head, which symbolizes the eaglet being born and new ideas given flight. Brook, for this year's spectacular lecture, thank you so much.
Thank you.
The preceding program is copyrighted by the Board of Trustees of the Leland Stanford Junior University. Please visit us at med.stanford.edu.